Hello, discrete math fans. Let's talk about the factorial. We've mentioned this before, but now we're going to be using it quite a bit more. It's just the product of all the positive integers up to a given point. So we'll make a definition here and just say that if n is a positive integer, then n factorial, which is written n with an exclamation point, it's just the product of all the integers from 1 to n. So n factorial is n times n minus 1 times n minus 2, all the way down to 3 times 2 times 1. 0 factorial is going to be defined to be 1. Keep in mind that this is just a definition. 0 factorial itself doesn't necessarily have any meaning in the context of the definition that we just gave, so we're going to just define 0 factorial to be 1. Now there's a recursive formula for computing factorials. You could say that n factorial is 1 if n is equal to 0, as we saw before, or it's equal to n times n minus 1 factorial. That's if n is bigger than or equal to 1. We'll keep this definition in mind because it is sort of useful later on when we want to do calculations involving factorials. All right, now there's an important use of factorials. It's used in quantities that show up in counting and probability. We're going to mess around with this quite a bit later on. So here's a symbol that we're going to define. So n and r are going to be integers. R is between 0 and n. And the symbol looks like kind of like a fraction with parentheses, but there's no fraction bar. So the way you read this is n choose r. And later on we're going to talk about why we use the word choose. And it represents the number of subsets of size r that can be chosen from a set of n elements. Now the definition implies that n choose r is an integer because it counts something, namely the number of subsets of a set. And the last thing I want to do is give you a formula for computing n choose r. We're going to prove this later on in the class. And the formula is that n choose r can be calculated with n factorial over r factorial times n minus r factorial. Now it's not at all obvious that this expression here should end up being an integer. After all, it's fraction. There's stuff in the denominator. And it turns out it's always going to be an integer, so long as you pick r to be between 0 and n. Okay, that's all for now.